Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
The views and opinions expressed in this video are those of my own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any other person or group of people. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of any group of people, person, or fanbase or its members. This video and the presentation of material therein do not imply the expression of any opinion other than mine.
Hello and welcome to this video. This video is going to be kind of a part 2 to my last video where I discussed viewing Stephen King's It as, or through the ideas, experiences of a Gen Xer. In this video, I'm gonna center on the 2017 It Chapter 1 and the 2019 It Chapter 2, because those are probably about the best Gen X versions of it, or relatable to a Gen X, in my opinion. Just scroll up in a tree right over here off camera, pelting my chickens. It's kind of interesting. But before we get into this video, I want to thank all those people that subscribe, leave comments, watch the video, and all the other people that do Gen X videos, the Gen X tubers out there. Because there's being some really good work done out there by them, embracing this new medium of working through trauma and working through being a Gen Xer squished between boomers and millennials. So thanks to all those people. It all means a lot to me. And without further ado, let's jump into this thing. Both these movies, the 2017, 2019, is kind of how I'm going to refer to them, or is It 1, It 2. Kind of do a retcon and time adjustment of the original It story. In the original story and in the original miniseries, it starts in the late 50s and ends in the mid 80s. Where this has been retconned to starting in the mid 80s and ending in the early 2010s, the mid 2010s. Because of the time adjustment, there are a lot of deviations from the source material. However, it stays very true to the themes and feeling of the story. In the 2017, we are introduced to our protagonist, and it is very much a mid-80s school that they're in. You have your bullies that have probably flunked more grades than they will ever complete. You have our heroes. We're first introduced to Bill well, we get to see the loss of his brother Georgie, Bill Denbrough, Richie Tozier, Stan Uris, and Eddie Kasprak. That is those four are our basic core. Then as the story progresses, we get Beverly Marsh and we get Mike Hamlin. In the last video, I think I left out Ricky Tozier, or Richie Tozier, not Ricky, Richie Tozier. All played by great children actors, but it has this very, the parents not being directly involved in the kids' lives is more relatable because it is in the 80s when, like, I grew up. My 10th through 19th birthday were in the 80s, so this is the themes, what they do, how they do things, is all very relatable to me. As is in the 2019 when we bring them back as adults. So one of the things that I liked that they deviated in the original miniseries, you get the time jumps between the being kids and being adults. And in the novel, that worked out real well. Simply because Stephen King is that good of a writer. He can make it work. He knows what words to choose, how to break it up, when to change time periods, and it works. Not so much in the original miniseries. For some reason, that writing style, at least for me, doesn't work real well in a film media or a live action medium. I imagine if to do it animated, you could probably do a whole lot more and stay a whole lot closer to the novel, just simply because of the nature of animation. I'm trying to figure out what the hell's in my pocket. Oh, the zip tie. Not a zip tie, a wrap. However, I think it was a good choice. It made it more relatable to, especially me as a Gen Xer, because you focus on the kids, you focus on the dynamic, you focus on with stuff that is more relatable to us who were kids in the 80s, how we came together in our tribes, you know, based on whether or not football player, bully, stoner, cheerleader, what have you, popular kids, unpopular kids. It's more relatable on how these tribes were formed because it's in a familiar setting. And when I come back as adults, the same thing. It's in the early 2010s or mid 2010. I think the second movie takes place in 2016 or 2017. I would have to go back and check that. And if you do know right offhand watching this video, leave it down in the comments because I've just forgot. And it's this relatability, this ability to see and adjust this wonderful story into something that as Gen X we're familiar with. Something that we can go, oh yeah, I remember that movie, or I remember that arcade game, or I remember doing this, I remember doing that. And And a lot of times when they do this in movies, they screw it up. There's a lot of movies that I've seen where they've retconned the time period and just screwed it up. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that the director is a Gen X kid. So I could be wrong. I'd have to look that up. But I get the feeling the way it's put together that he was doing something he was familiar with. The bicycles. And yes, we had bicycles. Me and my little tribe, all of our bicycles were Frankenstein. Somebody would be throwing a bike out, we'd go take it, we'd part it out, keep the parts that we wanted, and over time we would build our own bikes. We got real familiar with how to grease the bearings, lubricate everything, and because there wasn't the money. So we just kind of went with it. One of the things I learned how to do is my father had a propane torch. Is you set the heat on it low enough to blister off the paint and any stickers and stuff that we didn't want on our Frankenstein machines, and repaint them, rattle cans. Just go down to Walmart, pick up a rattle can, spray paint, and spray paint it. And that's kind of how we did things. And you get that sense, especially in the 2017 movie, It Won, of Bill sneaking things out of his dad's office and building this maze to demonstrate how a body, his brother Georgie's body, could have wound up in the Barrens, an area the kids played in. And it's really this ingenuity, something that comes out more prominent in the book that is kind of just barely touched on in the live action versions of the movies or the book or the novel, is Ben Hansken, not Bill Denbrough, Ben Hansken, too many B's there. In the novel, he reads up on how to smelt metal. He reads up on how to build things. He reads up on all this stuff so they can melt the silver down to make things to combat it. I discussed a lot in the other video how basically Pennywise the clown is a symbol, a metaphor, a representation of childhood trauma. What I didn't talk about was, because it's not in any of the live action stuff, because it would be really complex to do well, is the Turtle Guardian and the space between space. That is the Prim, which is also alluded to, well, not alluded to, it's talked about in depth in Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, which I may have to do a video on a Gen X interpretation of those. But that is another video. The whole thing that everything came out of nothingness, or this world between realities, between different realities, between different universes, or what have you, the Prim. Bill goes into it as a child and he goes into it as an adult. I believe when he's an adult, Richie goes with him into the prim, and they find the turtle, Mutron or Matron, something along those lines. I can never pronounce it correctly. So, and the turtle is a representation, in my opinion, this is my take on it, of things being okay, that there is shelter, there is a place to go, but you got to do it yourself, you got to carry it with you. And it also goes into the whole thing about never forget who and what you are, because the world won't, and it doesn't. But if you wear it like armor, it can never be used against you. And that's kind of how I see this turtle, is his shell, and living inside the shell. He knows he's a turtle. He knows he's super intelligent, multidimensional being, but he is there. You know, he has his house, his armor, his shell. And I think in a lot of ways that's what and how a representation or an interpretation can be. I could do just a whole series of videos just on this particular turtle metaphor. That, like I said, in any movie, even I think it would even be hard to do in animation, just simply because it involves a lot of philosophical stuff that's very relevant to the story and to just general interpretations. But by them taking these movies and doing this time retcon, it was well written, well done. The music, a lot of the 80s music they use in there is relatable. Was never a real big fan of New Kids on the Block, and Ben, in this particular iteration of the story, is. And it's interesting how Beverly kind of covers for him during one of the meetings they have, a Losers Club meeting they have in his room, because he's got a big New Kids on the Block poster, and she kind of helps him hide it, and she kind of gives him the wink wink. And we know that having friends like that growing up to help reduce any kind of embarrassment or anything like that is always a good friend to keep around and be around. Then when they come back as adults, the second movie opens with a very horrific scene from the novel, and that's where some homophobic bullies basically beat up and get blamed for the murder of one member of a homosexual couple. It's well done. It's played well. The writer or writers did not pull any punches with the homophobes. They were just as vile and as nasty as you come across people like that in real life. It was, like I said, it exemplifies that. We know that when the bullies throw the guy off the bridge, that it's Pennywise that kills him. That kills him. I'm watching chickens. They're chasing a little cottontail rabbit around. That's amusing. He was in there, got into where I throw their treats, but it's just amusing to watch. And once again, it's such reemergence of fear, trauma. I have friends that are homosexuals. I have friends that are trans. I have friends that are queer, gender fluid, and what have you. And I find that particular part of the book and that particular part of the 2019 movie to be extremely horrific. And as horrific as it is, it needs to be put out there for people to see. It needs to be put out there so people understand that homophobia is not something new. And it's something that needs to be combated. Even to this day, it is just, and being set in the 2010s, it is, or 2000 teens, I think is a better way to describe it. 2000 teens, that this behavior is still around, it's still prominent, it's still something we need as a society to work on. And I think that was King's intent in the novel, and I think it was skipped over in the 1990 miniseries, but the inclusion of it in the 2019 movie, or the 1990 miniseries, the 1990 miniseries, and the inclusion of it in the 2019 version was a good call. Now there are things that were left out in both versions, both the movies and the miniseries, that are probably good to be left out, to be honest with you, because non-readers, non-Stephen King fans, non-enlightened, or people that are on the path of awakening would be able to digest real well. They work real well in the printed format, and I believe you should read them. You should read the source material. Because I will always default, or I should say almost always default, to the source material being the superior form of a adapted property. And it's one of those things that it's interesting. It shines light. And I think over time, when they do have these horrific things, these horrific viewpoints, these horrific things, and it's set in a relatable time period, that it's easier for people to digest mentally how horrific this actually is. And that's about it. If you have any views, comments, please leave them below. If it's rude, obscene, or just vicious, I will probably ignore it. But if it's well written and the ability to state something, an opinion, in fairly conversational tones, I will probably make the time, the effort to look at it, to reply to it. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to agree with me to leave a comment. The comments, as long as they're well mannered and put together well, I will try to do my best to reply to them. So, until next time, peace.